Hi all, Clownman James here, and I'm here to show you how to get a metallic paint job on your props, such as what I have for my Endo 1 head here. For this tutorial, you'll need a paintbrush, a sponge, Mod Podge. I prefer to use some matte Mod Podge. I use gloss Mod Podge for the Endo head, and the metal sheen didn't seem that real. You want the paint to be the shiny bit, not the finish. You also want some red paint, some black paint, some silver paint, and some yellow paint. I'm using a particularly thick yellow paint. That's just to get the rust to have some more texture. To start off, we're going to need to seal it. So for this, I'm going to mix some black paint and some Mod Podge. Just like so. Squeeze in there. Then you get your Mod Podge. This is fresh, so it's kind of a little metal seal thing, plastic. I don't actually know what they are. They're some kind of metal, but excuse me. There we go. And we're going to mix that together just to get a nice black Mod Podge mix, which once we've fully mixed, we're going to apply to our Endo heads or whatever prop you're making metallic. Yeah, I'd say that's a good mix. So I'm going to start painting. You're not... Now, I'm going on not particularly thick. Well, actually, no, it is quite thick, but I believe me, when we get to the rust paint job, it will be going a lot thicker than what we're doing now. But for now, just try and have an even paint job of black Mod Podge. So don't let it pool up, else you're gonna have some difficulties with it drying. I'm just getting that over the bit of pink foam I used here because I ran out of black. I didn't run out, but you know, I didn't have one long enough for it, so I guess that would count as running out. But you just wanna get a good base paint over any bits of glue and obviously things that aren't that you don't want showing. There's some glue at the sides here to finish up the mouth. Of course, I used a lot of black foam, so I don't actually have to be that careful with my sealing coats, since most of it isn't going to be since most of it's the same color as the underneath anyways. But once you have that done, you're gonna set that aside and let it dry. Now that we've let it dry, we can start work on what I like to call rust underlayer, which is basically you mix a bit of reds and a bit of black together. Maybe a bit more red in here. And this will be put in a couple areas. Now, you could do this with a paintbrush, and that is probably what most of you will do, and then try and maybe sponge it off to get that rusted look. But what I'm going to do is, I didn't mention this in the things you need, because like I said, you can use a paintbrush and sponge. I'm going to use some polystyrene foam, and if you rip it, not cut, you have to rip it, you get this nice rough edge, which you get wet with some paint. It's great for rust details. So just put that in some key areas, you know. Now don't go overboard with the rust, and in fact you can wash some of the rust off once we get it on. So like put in areas in like corners, and areas that wouldn't get much attention, you know. And also by joints if you have them on the prop you're making. This where you put them also applies to, you know, paintbrush. So always, you know, make sure corners, add some black here just to smooth them out. Because the rust underlayer will be your guide to where you put the rust that you're going to put after you do the silver finish. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think I'll clean in around here because I actually don't want those squares that have much rust in them at all. So I'm just gonna grab some black. Fill in there. And I think that's fine. And now you just gotta let that dry too. I'm sorry it doesn't come off that well on camera, but there, you know, there is some rust areas. Black stuff is a bit hard to not focus on, but for the camera to pick up, you know. So wait for that to dry, and I'll get back to you then. Right, now that the paint's dry, we're gonna start with the silver. So you don't really want a pure silver. You want to add a bit of black into it to kind of make it sure it's not like perfect. So we're gonna mix in some black. Of course, you can go in with more silver if you don't like it, or what I usually do, you can go in with a darker silver, and then once that's dry, you can go over with a lighter silver. Gets more what's the word, depth to the paint, you know. Now, I'll be honest with you, I want my silver to be fairly dark here, on account of this being sort of an undermask to my Casual Freddy. So get some on your sponge, and you're just gonna dab it up, you know. Just lightly. Get that nice metallic look. This would probably be easier if I bought a mannequin head, but I did not. I could have. I was at the shops earlier today, but I did not. And now it's like 8 o'clock, and I can't do that now because they're all closed. Yeah, my sponge is a bit wet, so I'll be honest with you, it's not picking up the paint as well. It is usually better with a dry sponge, but you know, like I said, I don't want particularly bright silver on this head, since that's way too bright. And that's the beauty of the sponge, you can both add and subtract with it. So I'm just spreading it on here. It also helps you get into cracks more easily, you know. And also, you can see here, it kind of stays away from the edge. So if you have different pieces that are overlapping each other, it will accentuate the overlap. So I'm just working my way up. I especially don't want a very bright silver at the top, because that's where the eyes are. Well, lack of eyes. Golden Freddy doesn't really have eyes, does he? I might stick lights in it, but you know, I might not. His little eye dots aren't very prominent compared to the other animatronics. So, you know, it's gotten, as you can see here from the reflection, it's got quite the metallic sheen. But yeah. So I've covered up some of the rust areas just from applying the paint. Now, So you might want to, if you particularly want a very rusty look, you might avoid areas where we put rust on the undercoat. But for this purposes, I don't want something extremely rusty. I mean, I want obviously a bit of rust, but like not too much. Let me get more silver to put in there. A bit more blue, I think. Put some dirt onto the thing, just to get it in there. Go. And also, like I said, you can then let me get a different piece of sponge to make it easier. And get a different sponge, go at it. That will kind of remove some of the paint. Now, of course, this is going on very lightly, so the paint dries rather quickly. Obviously, you of course need to give it some time to dry, but that's gone quite good. Especially on camera, it looks a lot. It looks very real on camera, in fact. So we can actually, we don't have to wait for this to dry to start the rust overlayer. So I'd recommend mixing together a bit more of the same paint you did for the underlayer. I'm just using the spirit here, just to go over some of the places you had rust, which maybe have got a cover up. And of course, I'm gonna dab it with my fingers just to make it more prominent. Dabbing stuff with your fingers also helps quite a bit. Now we're gonna get to the rust overlay now. So we're gonna get some yellow because rust, obviously, it's very reddish. Iron is the reason why our blood is red. But I always find that rust has more of an orangey hue. Actually, I can. So sorry about that, but my storage ran out on my phone, so I'll try and make this quick. So basically, I did the rust overlay, which was just mixing in some yellow paints. I went some very thick yellow paints in with the rust underlay paint. I dabbed over some of the rusted spots with the rust overlay paint, and that should be it for paint wise. So we're going to be on to sealing it soon. So once you have all of this painted, set it to dry, and then we'll go seal it. Right, now that that's dried, you want to get some Mod Podge, preferably matte Mod Podge. You don't want to gloss stuff, and I'll tell you why. I used gloss Mod Podge on this fella right here, my Endo 1 head, and obviously the silver parts, the shine on the silver parts is different compared to how it was when I first painted it. When I first painted it, it was a lot similar to this. But mostly, the darker parts, where it's not supposed to be as shiny, especially in the rust areas, were very shiny. They look almost wet at times. Now that's something you don't want, because it doesn't look like metal. Because before I put the finish on this, it looked a lot like metal. So if I were you, I would get a matte Mod Podge and not a, where is it? Not a gloss Mod Podge like I used on him. Now you're going to want to get your sponge. And open up your thing of Mod Podge. So we're gonna dip this in. And we're gonna scrape off a lot because you don't want a lot of a Mod Podge. You don't want it pooling. This is literally just a light coat to stop the paint from scratching off. Because believe me, paint loves to scratch off a foam or more rub off. So we're just gonna lightly cover it. We don't want it to bunch up like it is doing here at the edges. So make sure at the edges it's not bunching up. I'm just gonna go over it. If the great thing about a sponge is that you can go over areas that have too much and drag it off. And using a sponge instead of a brush, that reduces the amount of brush strokes, So if you're using a paintbrush, you'll see a lot of brush strokes. It'll kind of mess up the shape and how light reflects off it. You don't want a very brushstroke texture, Well, maybe you do. I don't know what you're making. But for metal, for like the type of metal I'm going for, I want flats. I want kind of grungy. It's just going through. Try and get out from there. Trapped in the corners of the teeth, so just gonna wipe that away. Now I am running low on it, so I'm gonna dip it back in, scrape off the edge, scrape off again, don't want too much, like I said earlier. Like I said, this is just to stop the paint from coming off, because it can be very annoying. There's a lot of times where I've paint come off props like this, Freddy's microphone. It's not fun, kind of messes up photo shoots and stuff. To be fair, I've only ever been to one photo shoot, but still. So, yeah. Get a nice, even coating. Clean up any areas where it's pooling, and you should have something good. And once that dries, the sort of very plastically sheen of it should somewhat go away, because you've got matte Mod Podge, and you should be good. And that's how I get my metal finish on my props and costumes. If you like this content, and you want to see more of it, subscribe. I don't upload that much during the winter months, but during the summer I try to put out a couple videos and shorts. And if you're going to go to Dublin Comic Con, I'll also be there on the Sunday. And I'll be wearing my casual Freddy costume, which is actually what this is for. So see you there, and goodbye.